Get started with today's webinar. All right. Hi, guys. My name is Sam, and welcome to Dubsado's Situations with Sam. I'm here on the Account Solutions team, and along with my colleagues Cameron and Annika, we love helping you get the most out of your Dubsado account. So if you're ever running into trouble implementing exactly what you want to do in your account, feel free to book a call with our Account Solutions team, and we're happy to help you out. We also love educating and helping you expand your knowledge of the system, and that's what I love doing with these webinars. So the last couple of weeks, we've been doing some more just some more advanced techniques. I wanted to slow it down a little bit this week and do something that just about anyone using Dubsado can use, and that is implementing some simple automated responses whenever a client fills out your lead capture form. So if you're just getting into the system and you've got a few things set up, you're ready to work with clients, but not quite ready to build out that full workflow yet, this is exactly what you need. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we will get started. Both on Facebook and in BigMarker, you should be able to find a handout, and that looks like this. So with all of these, I always prepare a handout of notes for you, our outline for the webinar, so you can take that with you, and it will help you get set up on your own. So again, our goal for today is to create a workflow that's going to automatically send an email once the client has filled out your lead capture form. So we're connecting the workflow to the lead capture form so that that can happen automatically. So whenever someone fills out that form, they're not left wondering if you received their response or if they got through, and they're getting that quick note from you without you having to sit on your inbox all of the time. So it's that first step into automation and having things run smoothly for you. I do want to just point out, as I kind of mentioned as well, that workflows are pretty much one of the most advanced things that you can set up in Dubsado. They are so powerful and they are so cool to use, but that can come with a little bit of overwhelm at times, and they do take a little bit of effort to set up. So if you're just getting new into the system, this is a great way to get kind of introduced to workflows and dip your toe in and really start using them in your business, start using that automation. But we would recommend holding off on building your entire process into a workflow until you're comfortable using Dubsado manually and you have your process really laid out and you're confident in it. So just, some words of advice there as we get started. I've also linked for you a couple of our help articles related to some of the topics that are kind of woven into this webinar. So just being familiar with projects and clients, how to create a canned email, just generally what smart fields are and what a lead capture form is, that will help you out. I'm not going to spend too much time on the nitty-gritty of each of those things. We're going to focus more on the how-to and the setup. All right, so here's what we need. We're going to need a lead capture form, which I'll go over a little bit. We're going to need a canned email template for the automated response that you want to be sent to the client. So of course, because this is automated, we need a template with that email content set up ahead of time so that the workflow can send the email for us, which we're going to set up together. And then another big one here is that you should have your email account connected to Dubsado. This is one of the first things we recommend doing when you start your Dubsado account, but just in case, up here in the settings icon, your main settings for the account, under the emails tab, make sure that you have a connected account here. And if not, check out our help center on how to get that set up. But this is going to ensure that the emails being sent out from Dubsado are coming from your email account. And that helps make sure that those emails get delivered to the client. So very important, make sure that is in place before setting this up. Okay, so we're going to go through the instructions and the how-to, but first, I did this on my last webinar and I think it worked out pretty well. I want to show you kind of a timeline of what is happening kind of behind the scenes when we set this up so that you have kind of a full picture of what the workflow is doing. So on our timeline at the top, we have actions that are kind of happening outside of Dubsado. And at the bottom, we have things that would be set up in Dubsado or that Dubsado is doing automatically for you. So first, we're going to create that lead capture form and connect the workflow to it. That's what we're going to go over. Once that is set up, you can embed or share that lead capture form so that potential clients can fill it out and submit it. So then a client is going to submit a lead capture form. This is when all of the action happens right here. There's a lot happening at one time. So when the client submits the lead capture form, automatically Dubsado is going to generate a new project with that client's information. And the workflow that we connect to the lead capture form is going to be applied and activated on that new project so it starts running. So that's how workflows work, is you set up the template for what you want to have automated, and then you apply it to a project so that the workflow can act on that project and send out your email in this case. So what the lead capture is doing is it's actually just applying the workflow for us, so we don't have to do that manually. So that all happens, and then you're going to get an email notification anytime a new lead fills out a lead capture form. You can see in your settings back in Dubsado under branding, there's a notification email setting right here. So that new lead notification is going to be sent to this email address, whatever you put in there. It's separate from connecting your email account for the outgoing emails. And finally, and pretty much instantaneously as well, depending on how you set up the timing in the workflow, the client themselves, they are going to receive the automated email that you set up in your workflow. So this is just a good overview to understand what's happening in Dubsado with this process. All right, so let's take a look at what we have to set up, and we're going to start with the lead capture form. So under templates and forms, over on the right-hand side, we have our lead capture, and I set one up called Contact Me. So again, lead capture might be something that you put on your website to replace an existing contact form. That's generally how we recommend using it. And just to review, all lead capture forms must include 3 short answer fields, and those 3 short answer fields must be required, and one each is mapped to the client first name, client last name, and the client email address. This one in particular, making sure we have a short answer field mapped to the client email address is very important, because otherwise Dubsado doesn't know what email to send your message to when the client fills out the form. So definitely want to make sure this is set up correctly. You should just be checking those fields and make sure that they are mapped appropriately so that Dubsado can save and use that information. On here as well, you can really add as many questions as you'd like to the lead capture. As a rule of thumb, the more you add, the kind of higher barrier to entry there is for someone to fill out that form. So if you really want to qualify clients, you could make it longer. If you really want to encourage people to reach out to you quickly, you can make it shorter. But definitely collect at least the minimum amount of information you would need to start working with that client, reach back out to them. So maybe if you're in the business of having, working with a client that has an event, you might have a date select field here for an event date. And this can be mapped as well. So you can map that into the project date if you want that to automatically go in. Otherwise, you could look into creating a custom mapped field. We have help articles on that just to save that date in there. That can be helpful for the canned email, which I will show you shortly. and then just some other questions. But the main part is that contact information there. So just make sure you have the lead capture set up. We're going to come back to the settings after we've created the workflow. All right, so we've got that lead capture set up and ready to go. The next piece is to make sure we have our canned email ready. So if you started a Dubsado account recently within the last few months, we started helping you out a little bit more with some more email templates. So we brought in, a great set of default email templates for you to start from. So you can certainly edit any of these email templates to better fit your business and your branding and what you do for your clients. But a good place to start if you need help kind of getting a kickstart on just an inquiry response, we have one right here. It's called Inquiry Response General. So we can click on that. And it's just a starting point for an automated reply to the client. So this is what we can use. What we want to make sure, especially if there's an event that the client is asking about availability around when we're not using, it's not appropriate for the scheduler, the client is just inquiring about a date. We want to make sure we're not committing to that date with the client just yet because you still have to review your calendar and review the client's submitted information. So it might be nice to let them know that in the email, something like, I'll follow up with you in X amount of time with more information. If you use that project date on the lead capture form with the date select field, you could pop in a smart field into that canned email and show, I will check my calendar for let's see, so under smart field and then project, we can pull in the project start for that date. And, just customizing that email a little bit more with the smart fields so that the client can really see that their information was submitted. So that's a great way to personalize the email. All right, so once you've got your email set up and ready to go, that's going to be the automated reply that goes out. The next step is to set up the workflow. So under templates and workflow, we can get going on that. I'm going to use this lead response general template that I just started. You'll click add workflow in the top right-hand corner there to start a new workflow. But right here under lead response general, I will open this up. It's a blank workflow template, so we're ready to get started. Now, workflows are made up of actions. So this might be your first time building a workflow. Congratulations. Welcome to the club. So the first and really only action we need in this workflow is to send an email. So I'll click add action. And workflow actions are made up of 3 parts. Usually the action or what you want to have happen, the when, which is the trigger or when it should happen, and then the content or what you want to have sent to the client. So first you need to choose the action, and you want to be very specific when you choose the action because there are a lot of options here, and you want to choose the one that best fits what you are wanting to have happen in the workflow. So for instance, we just want to send a plain email. There's no form link attached. There's nothing crazy going on. It's just an email to the client. So that would be a send email action. But down the line, when you start adding more actions to your workflow and you may want to send a form, then you definitely want to use the send form action because that's going to have different options from just the send email action. So for now, I'm going to choose send email. And here's that piece I was talking about, the content at the bottom. So we've chosen what we want to have happen, and now we need to specify exactly which content we want to send the client. So right here where it says email to send, I can use this drop down to find my canned email. So you can see how having your templates set up ahead of time really makes workflow building much faster, much easier. It's kind of like the difference between baking a cake when you have all your ingredients laid out on the table and ready to go, and baking a cake where you have to go back to the store every time you need another ingredient. So that's not fun. That's overwhelming and probably gets a little annoying after a while, always going back to the store. So when you can have all of your templates set up ahead of time, it's very easy just to select them in the workflow actions as you build them, and they're all right there. So for email to send, we can actually search. I know it's called inquiry response general. So we'll choose that one, and it's bringing in the canned email right here. And then we come to the when. So the when is when this action should be triggered. And I want to tell you about a common mistake I see when creating a workflow that is intended to start from a lead capture form. Just like actions, we have a number of different trigger options. And you'll notice that one of the trigger options is after a form is completed. So it may seem like that's the trigger you want because the lead capture form is getting completed. So we want to send the email after the form is completed. But in a workflow, this trigger is actually only intended for forms that have been previously sent through the workflow. So the lead capture form itself, it's not being sent through the workflow. It's not added to a project. It's actually embedded on your website or shared via a link, and then it is just shared with your clients outside of Dubsado. It's generating the project. So that is why it's not appearing here. There are no forms for us to select because the lead capture is not being sent off through the workflow. If you were to send a questionnaire or a proposal, we could use this trigger, but it's not appropriate for the lead capture. So instead, we have two options. You can use after workflow started. So that's one choice you can do. If we look back at our timeline, remember that the workflow starts as soon as the lead capture form is submitted. So that trigger makes great sense because as soon as the workflow starts on the project, that trigger can have this email be sent out. The other alternative is, after all previous actions complete. So there are no previous actions in the workflow. This will be the first and only action. So you can definitely use this trigger as well. And in fact, if you're wanting an immediate reply to go out, I do find that this one tends to run a little bit faster than our after workflow started trigger. So that would be the choice of trigger there. And then you can add a little bit of padding time to this if you would like. So if we leave this at 0 days, that would be immediate. That translates to immediate. In fact, at the bottom, I'll click apply, and we can see our action, send email, inquiry response general, immediately after all previous actions complete. I can click edit to change the action. Let's say maybe I wanted there to be a delay in this email sending out. I don't want it to seem quite so automated. I could maybe put in a 1 hour delay, and that would change this so that once the workflow starts, it would wait an additional hour before sending the email. So you can really customize this to work with the client experience that you want to create. I'm going to change this back to 0 days. You could do 0 hours or 0 days. In fact, with hours, a cool trick too is you can use decimal points. So if you don't quite want an hour, maybe you want 15 minutes, you can do 0.25 hours. That'll translate to a quarter of an hour, 15 minutes. So lots of options there. We'll stick with 0 days. And that's it. There's our workflow. I spent some extra time kind of explaining how to build a workflow action, but really just how quick it is to come in, add action, send email, click the email, inquiry response general, 0 days after all previous actions complete, apply, done. It's really not as time consuming as you might think. once you have everything mapped out and your templates built. It's very quick to put these together. Okay, so we have our workflow created there. Now we need to connect it to our lead capture forms. So let's go under templates and forms. This is always the fun part, getting everything connected together. Under lead capture, we'll go back to our contact me, open it up and go to the settings tab. So in the settings of the lead capture, we can choose right here a default workflow. This is the workflow that will always start every time this lead capture is filled out. So from the drop down here, I'll choose our general lead response workflow. And up at the top, I will click save. And then you can click on the share button to share the workflow, or excuse me, share the lead capture form. So you have that iframe code to embed the form on your website. We also have the direct link. I'll go ahead and open up the direct link. This is great to share your form through social media. Maybe you don't have a website yet. That direct URL right here is really useful for that. So here's our form. I'm going to quick fill this out so we can see this in action. And we'll put in a date, let's say November 1st. And testing is always important and fun, right, guys? It is, testing is really just a big part of setting things up in Dubsado. Even if you're confident in the pieces you've put together in the system and how they fit together, it can be really useful to run a test just to catch any formatting issues or even, spelling errors or issues in your canned emails or forms. So always testing is always going to be a good thing. Under leads, I'm on the projects page. Under leads is where I will find my new project generated by the lead capture form. So I have one right here. And we can already see in the inbox that thanks for reaching out email has gone out. So we have our email right here. It's filling in the date that I put on the lead capture form because we had that smart field for the project date. And if we go under the workflows tab, it was so speedy, but we can see in the workflows tab right here, that is the active workflow that's already run. So when you see a workflow with a action with a big check mark next to it, that means Dubsado ran that action on your project, and it will let you know the time it was triggered as well. So that's pretty much it for setting up a really simple automatic reply with your lead capture form using a workflow. So once you have your canned email, you just create a workflow with the send email action and then connect it up to your lead capture as the default workflow. And that is it. I want to show you one more way you can expand on this if you have multiple services in your business. If there are any questions, we're just about to the end here, so just hold on to those and you can write those in the chat and I will get to them at the end. All right, so under templates and workflow, you may have noticed that I kind of preemptively set up some additional templates here, one for corporate and one for family. So if you have a business where you offer some different services, or maybe you cater to kind of different areas, maybe a photographer who does both corporate photography and family photos, you may want to send a different response based on what the client is interested in. And we can actually do that from the lead capture form. So same process, you'll want to create a separate canned email for each of the different services you have. And then you'll want to create also a separate workflow for each of the services you have, as I've done here. Let's go into the corporate workflow, and it's the same thing. Send email immediately after all previous actions complete. Nothing different there, but you can take this to another level by adding an action to add a tag. So projects in Dubsado can have tags, and the tags are great for telling different types of projects apart. So this is perfect for if you want to, tell the difference between weddings and corporate events, or maybe between a web design project or an SEO project or a website maintenance project. Pretty much you can set up your services as tags, and that will help you organize your projects a little bit better. So if I click add tag as our action, this can get added in automatically. Under tag to add, I had some set up ahead of time. I'll just choose corporate. And this is happening, instantaneously, just about behind the scenes. So the client never sees this, but we can use after all previous actions complete as well. And we could even reorder this to bring it to the top. So it adds the tag to the project and then sends the email. It's imperceptible to the client. So just adding that tag is a great step forward in starting to organize those projects as they come in. Just to show you what that would look like, if I go under my contact me, and the project will automatically take on the title of the lead capture form. There is a setting in there where you can change that. If we go into this project and add a tag to it, we can just kind of see what the workflow would be doing. You can see the tag there. And you can see the tag on the projects page as well. Right here is that colored dot. You can filter by tag. So this really starts to come in handy if you have many inquiries for different services in your business. So by adding that into the workflow, they're automatically filtering into Dubsado with the appropriate tag. Okay, now how does this work from the lead capture form? So under forms, we're going to go back to our contact lead capture. In the settings tab, I'm going to remove the default workflow. So we do that just by clicking the blue X right there. And as I mentioned, if you want to set a different lead title as those projects are created, the project title, you can set that right here if you don't want it to default to the name of the lead capture form. You can put in a default right there. But on the form, instead of our default workflow setting, we're going to add in a workflow element. So this is a drop-down box, and that's how it appears to the client. They make a selection from a drop-down. But when we click on it, in here, it's set up a little bit differently. So for each option that we offer to the client, corporate or family, we can specify a different workflow to start. So let's find our corporate workflow here and our family workflow here. So if the client chooses the corporate option, the corporate workflow will start. They'll get the corporate tag. They'll get the email that you set up for your corporate clients. And the same thing with family, but they would get all of the family materials. So this is a really good time as you're, getting new into the system, just to start differentiating your templates by the different services that you offer, because it's really helpful to start that process from the lead capture form. So there we go. We have the drop down, and I do recommend marking this as required just because we wouldn't want the client to skip it. So go ahead and mark that as required. And now this will work the exact same, this exact same way as before, but the workflow is being triggered by the option they choose in that drop down. So that's all included in your handout as well. You can check that out. And I also have a few extra tips that we went over at the bottom as well. And that is pretty much it on automated responses in Dubsado to easily get started with those. I'm going to jump back over to Big Marker and see if there are any questions. If you had any questions that came up along the way or have any questions now, go ahead and type those in the chat. I'm happy to spend a little extra time answering those. I'm going to double check in Facebook as well, just to see. Okay, well, I'm not seeing any questions, guys. I really hope this was helpful. Um, oh, Tim, what happens when you add an action after the workflow started? Um, Tim, are you referring to the trigger using the after workflow started trigger, or are you talking about adding an additional action? In the workflow, let's see here. So in the workflow, when we're looking at an action, you have the ability to set the trigger right here. So if you do after workflow started, this action is going to run relative to when the workflow was started. And when we connect the workflow to the lead capture form, that pretty much translates to after the lead capture form was filled out. That will be when the workflow is actually starting. Tim says, like adding the tag to the project. So essentially, in the example where we're adding a tag, in the workflow, it's just an additional action. So workflows are actually intended to run multiple actions. Eventually, you'll want to sort of build your whole process into a workflow. To start off with, though, we're just using these couple of actions, but adding the corporate tag is just going to do what we saw before when we went into the project and chose a tag from this drop-down list. So workflows really do automate what you could have done manually in the system. The add a tag workflow action is the same as if you came into the workflow and added a tag here. Tim, let me know if that's answering your question. But yeah, essentially you can, keep building on those workflows as you become comfortable with your process and after you've tested some things out in the system. Okay, awesome. I'm glad that answered it, Tim. Any other questions? Happy to help. If you come up with questions later on or have, more specific questions related to your process, your specific business. If it's a quick thing, feel free to leave a comment on the replay in the Facebook community. So a replay will be available there. Otherwise, if it's a little bit more specific and in depth, feel free to book a call with us, our account solutions team. We're happy to help you out there. One last sort of announcement, just for some of our upcoming webinars, if you want to check those out. On Thursday at 9:45 a.m. Pacific, Cameron is doing his weekly FAQ&A. This week is all about payment schedules, so that is a great one to check out. And I will be back in 3 weeks' time doing a webinar on creating highly custom proposals. So if you have, very custom quotes in your business and it's maybe a little bit of a a little bit more involved than just having the client choose between package A, B, and C. You're wanting to offer more custom options to the client. That is what I'm going to be going over in that webinar. So thank you everyone for joining me today. I'm going to sign off and wish you a wonderful rest of your Tuesday.